30 nasty rumors about Doc Holliday that will give you the chills. Today we're diving into 30 of the nastiest rumors about Doc Holliday. Born John Henry Holliday, he was a man of many talents and even more secrets. Holliday's story is filled with larger-than-life moments. Number 30. A violent childhood. Doc Holliday, whose real name was John Henry Holliday, was born in Griffin, Georgia on August 14, 1851. His parents, Henry Burroughs Holliday and Alice Jane Holliday, provided a somewhat tumultuous start to life for young John. His father was a significant figure, having served in both the Mexican-American War and the Civil War. This meant that the Holliday household was no stranger to the harsh realities and disruptions brought by these conflicts. Henry Holliday rose to the rank of major during the Civil War, but illness forced him to resign in 1862.
Also played a pivotal role in one of the most iconic Wild West battles on October 26, 1881.
Just 2 years later, in the face of advancing Union troops, the family moved to Valdosta, Georgia, near the Florida line. Here, the Holliday family began to establish themselves as prominent members of the community. Despite the backdrop of war and conflict, Alice did her best to shelter her son from the traumas of the time. But life had other plans for young John. In 1866, when he was just 15 years old, his beloved mother passed away from tuberculosis, a disease that would haunt the Holliday family for years. Her death was a crushing blow to John, who was incredibly close to her. To make matters worse, his father remarried just 3 months later to a woman only a few years older than John himself. Number 29. Born into war. Doc Holliday was exposed to the horrors of war from a very young age. There's a lot of truth to that. Imagine being a kid and your dad is off fighting in wars. That's exactly what happened with Doc Holliday. His father, Henry Burroughs Holliday, was quite the soldier, serving in both the Mexican-American War and the Civil War. Young John Henry Holliday, or Doc as we know him, grew up in an environment heavily influenced by these conflicts. His dad was not just a regular soldier. He rose to the rank of major during the Civil War. This meant that the war wasn't just something happening far away, it was right there, affecting the family directly. They had to move to Valdosta, Georgia, to avoid the threat of Union troops. So, from a very young age, Doc was no stranger to the chaos and upheaval that came with war. It must have been quite an experience, shaping him in ways we can only imagine. Number 28. Tuberculosis curse. Tuberculosis curse that plagued the Holliday family. Rumor has it that they were cursed with tuberculosis, and sadly, this isn't far from the truth.
Amidst the tales, the question lingers. How true are the stories about him?
Tuberculosis was like a shadow over Doc's life. His mother, Alice Jane Holliday, was one of the first to fall victim to the disease, passing away when Doc was just 15 years old. This was a huge blow for him because he was incredibly close to her. The curse didn't stop there, though. Doc himself was diagnosed with tuberculosis not long after, and it was a relentless part of his life until the very end. Even his adoptive brother, Francisco, who his father had brought back from the Mexican-American War, succumbed to the same illness. It's no wonder that tuberculosis seemed like a family curse. The disease had a profound impact on Doc, shaping his choices and the course of his life in ways that went far beyond the physical suffering. Number 27. Speech impediments. And then there's the rumor about Doc Holliday having severe speech impediments.
Troops invading. Soon the Holliday family became prominent in the community.
This one's true, too. As a kid, he struggled with speech issues and even had a cleft palate. You can imagine how tough that must have been, especially in a time when medical treatments were nowhere near what we have today. But here's the thing, Doc didn't let that stop him. Thanks to corrective surgery and countless hours of dedicated practice, largely guided by his mother, Doc overcame these challenges. He worked hard to get past his speech impediments, which shows just how determined he was even as a young boy. By the time he grew up, He had not only conquered these difficulties, but he had also become an articulate and educated man. It's pretty inspiring when you think about it, how he turned a significant obstacle into a stepping stone towards becoming the legendary figure we know today.
And Doc's mother did her best to shelter him from the traumas of wartime living.
Number 26. A brilliant student. Doc Holliday is this rough, tough, Wild West gunslinger, but there's a rumor that he was actually a highly intelligent individual. And it's true. Despite his later reputation, young John Henry Holliday was a brilliant student. He wasn't just smart, he was exceptional. Doc attended the Valdosta Institute and was known for his academic excellence. He devoured subjects like rhetoric, mathematics, and history, and on top of that, he became fluent in Latin, French, and ancient Greek. Can you imagine mastering all those languages at such a young age? By the time he was just 20 years old, he had already earned a degree in dental surgery from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery. He graduated 5 months before his 21st birthday, but because he wasn't old enough to practice yet, they held on to his degree until he reached the minimum age required to work as a dentist. This guy was not just book smart, he had a drive and dedication that were truly remarkable. Number 25. A gambler's life.
Well, in 1876, his father was elected mayor, which marked a time of elevation.
The rumor is that he abandoned his career in dentistry to become a full-time gambler. There's a lot of truth to this one too, but the story is a bit more nuanced. After moving to Dallas and setting up a dental practice, Doc's life took a turn. His persistent cough from tuberculosis made it difficult to maintain his practice. Dental work requires steady hands and good health, both of which were compromised by his illness. Faced with this reality, Doc turned to gambling. It wasn't just a casual hobby, it became his primary source of income. He had a knack for card games, and soon gambling took over his life. While his skills at the card table earned him a living, they also pulled him deeper into a world of risk and lawlessness. Number 24. Illegal activities.
Who had earned his mark of recognition. Unfortunately, Doc's mother died on September 16, 1866, after a long history with
Speaking of lawlessness, there's a rumor that Doc Holliday was constantly on the wrong side of the law. This one is also pretty accurate. Doc Holliday's life was riddled with legal issues, many stemming from his gambling activities and violent confrontations. In Dallas, he was indicted for illegal gambling, and this was just the beginning. He moved around quite a bit, always trying to stay one step ahead of the law. For instance, in January 1875, he was arrested after a gunfight with the saloon keeper Charles Austin. Though no one was injured in that particular incident, it was one of many that showcased Holliday's fiery temper and readiness to resort to violence. His reputation as a troublemaker followed him wherever he went, leading to more arrests and fines. Number 23. The Dallas gunfight. So there's this rumor that Doc Holliday was frequently involved in gunfights. And while it sounds like something straight out of a Wild West movie, there's definitely some truth to it.
Death was a terrible blow to the 15-year-old Doc Holliday, as he and his mother had been very close.
One of the most notorious incidents was his gunfight with saloon keeper Charles Austin in Dallas. In January 1875, Holliday got into a heated argument with Austin. Things escalated quickly, as they often did with Doc, and before long, shots were fired. Although no one was injured in this particular shootout, it added to Holliday's growing reputation as a volatile and dangerous man. This wasn't a one-off event, it was just one of many recorded incidents where Doc found himself in the middle of a gunfight. His fiery temper and willingness to draw his gun made him a feared figure of the West. Number 22. Alias in Denver.
It did not help that his father married Rachel Martin only 3 months later, on December 18, 1866.
Another interesting tidbit about Doc Holliday is the rumor that he often used aliases to escape trouble. This one is spot on. In Denver, he went by the name Tom Mackey to keep a low profile. After things got too hot in Texas, Doc headed to Denver in the summer of 1875. There he worked as a dealer for a gambling establishment under his new alias. The name change was more than just a clever ruse. It was a survival tactic. By using an alias, Doc could continue his gambling activities without immediately attracting the attention of law enforcement or old enemies. This period in Denver was just one of many times he reinvented himself to stay ahead of the law and maintain his lifestyle. Number 21. Violent encounters. Then there's the rumor that Doc Holliday left a trail of wounded or dead opponents in his wake.
Funnily enough, Rachel was only a few years older than Doc Holliday back then.
This one, too, has a lot of truth to it. Doc was involved in numerous violent altercations, many of which resulted in serious injuries. For example, during his time in Denver, he got into a knife fight with a well-known gambler named Bud Ryan. The fight left Ryan seriously wounded. Another instance was in 1879 in Las Vegas, New Mexico, where Holliday had a disagreement with a local tough named Mike Gordon. The argument ended with Holliday shooting Gordon dead. These incidents weren't just isolated. They were part of a pattern of behavior that marked Doc's life. He seemed to have a knack for finding or perhaps attracting trouble, and his response was almost always violent. Number 20. Love and conflict with Bignos Kate. There's a juicy rumor that Doc Holliday's relationship with Bignos Kate was tumultuous and often violent.
Role in one of the most iconic Wild West battles on October 26, 1881.
Well, let me tell you, this one isn't far from the truth. Kate Horney, also known as Bignos Kate, was a Hungarian-born prostitute and dance hall girl who was the only woman Doc is known to have had a serious relationship with. Their romance was passionate, fiery, and filled with drama. Kate was tough and tenacious, matching Doc's own fiery temper. They met in Fort Griffin, Texas, and quickly became inseparable, though their relationship was far from smooth. They fought frequently, and their arguments were as intense as their affections. One of the most notable conflicts occurred when Kate, in a fit of anger, signed an affidavit implicating Doc in a stagecoach robbery and murder. Although she later recanted her statement, the incident showed just how volatile their relationship could be. Despite the turbulence, they stayed together on and off for many years, bound by a shared wild spirit and a love that was as destructive as it was passionate. Number 19. Feuds and friendships. Another compelling rumor is that Holliday's friendships often led to deadly feuds. And boy, this one is absolutely true. The most famous of these friendships was with Wyatt, a lawman and gambler with whom Doc shared a deep bond. Their alliance was central to the Earp-Clanton feud, a legendary conflict in the annals of the Wild West. Doc and Wyatt met in Fort Griffin, Texas, and quickly became close friends. Their friendship was solidified in Dodge City, Kansas, and later in Tombstone, Arizona, where they stood together against the notorious Clanton gang. The feud between the Earps and the Clantons culminated in the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. Number 18. The OK Corral shootout. Speaking of the OK Corral, there's a rumor that Doc Holliday was the primary instigator of this infamous gunfight. The reality is a bit more nuanced, but there's no denying that he played a pivotal role. The shootout at OK Corral took place on October the 26th, 1881 in Tombstone, Arizona.
Furthermore, Doc Holliday did have an adoptive brother named Francisco, whom his father brought home after the Mexican-American War.
And it's one of the most famous events in Wild West history. The exact details of how the gunfight started are still disputed. Some accounts suggest that Doc, armed with a shotgun, may have been the one to fire the first shot. Others say the confrontation began with a tense standoff that quickly escalated. What's clear is that Doc Holliday was in the thick of it, standing alongside Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan Earp against the Clanton and McClory brothers. Number 17. Vendetta Ride. So there's this rumor that Doc Holliday went on a vengeful killing spree. And while that sounds like something out of a Western novel, there's a good chunk of truth to it. After Morgan Earp was brutally murdered in 1882, Wyatt Earp decided enough was enough. He gathered a posse, including Doc Holliday, to exact vengeance on those responsible.
Sadly, Holliday's adoptive brother also succumbed to tuberculosis.
This series of events is known as the Earp Vendetta Ride. Doc was right there with Wyatt, driven by loyalty and perhaps a personal taste for retribution. The posse tracked down and confronted various members of the Clanton gang and their allies, leading to several deadly encounters. One of the most notable was the killing of Frank Stillwell, who was found riddled with bullets and buckshot near the railroad tracks in Tucson, Arizona. Number 16. The Iron Springs Showdown. Another rumor claims that Holliday and Wyatt Earp faced overwhelming odds in a deadly shootout at Iron Springs. Well, this one is absolutely true. The Iron Springs encounter is one of the most dramatic episodes in Holliday's life. On March the 24th, 1882, the Earp posse, including Doc, rode out to Iron Springs, also known as Mescal Springs, in the Whetstone Mountains, looking for a group of outlaws. What they found was more than they bargained for. They stumbled upon a camp of heavily armed cowboys led by the notorious Curly Bill Brocious. As soon as Curly Bill spotted Wyatt, he opened fire and chaos erupted. Number 15. Fallout with Wyatt Earp.
The family has a known history of tuberculosis, don't you think?
There's also a rumor that Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp had a major falling out over a personal insult. Well, this one is true as well, and it's a bit of a sad chapter in their storied friendship. In 1882, after all the chaos of the Vendetta ride, Doc and Wyatt found themselves in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They were dining at a place called Fat Charlie's The Retreat when things took a nasty turn. According to reports, Doc made an offhand comment that offended Wyatt deeply. He allegedly called Wyatt a damn Jew boy, which hit a nerve because Wyatt was close to a Jewish woman named Josephine Marcus. They parted ways not long after that, each going on to live the remainder of their lives separately. It's a reminder that even the closest of friendships can be fragile, and that the pressures and prejudices of the time could strain even the strongest bonds. Number 14. Ailing health.
In his reputation, you might think that Doc Holliday was an unruly child, but that was far from true.
So there's this rumor that Doc Holliday's health was in constant decline, leading to some pretty bizarre behavior. And you know what? That's pretty accurate. Holliday's lifelong struggle with tuberculosis severely affected his lifestyle and actions. Holliday was diagnosed with tuberculosis in his early 20s, and it was a relentless presence throughout his life. The coughing fits, fever, and general weakness would have been enough to knock anyone off their feet, but Doc pushed through it. This relentless illness not only dictated his erratic movements from town to town, but also forced him into a life where he had to rely more on gambling and less on his dental profession. His declining health was a constant backdrop, influencing his decisions and undoubtedly contributing to his legendary tough guy persona. You've got to admire his tenacity, even if it sometimes led to some questionable choices and behaviors. Number 13. The Final Days.
Child, Holliday actually suffered from speech impediments and a cleft palate.
They say his death was marked by unusual circumstances and some memorable last words. The reality is just as intriguing. Holliday died in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, where he had gone in the hope that the hot springs might improve his health. Unfortunately, the sulfurous fumes probably did more harm than good. In his last moments, despite the pain and suffering, Doc reportedly found humor in his situation. It said that he looked down at his bare feet and remarked, "This is funny," because he always thought he'd die with his boots on. It's a fitting, ironic end for a man who lived such a wild and unpredictable life. He passed away on November the 8th, 1887 at the age of 36. Wyatt wasn't there when he died and only learned of his passing months later. The circumstances of his death add another layer to the enigmatic legend of Doc Holliday. Number 12. Misreported deaths.
It was recorded that Holliday was an exemplary student.
Finally, there's the rumor that newspapers frequently misreported Doc Holliday's death. And this one is absolutely true. Given his risky lifestyle, it's no surprise that Doc was falsely reported dead multiple times. Living on the edge as a gambler, gunfighter, and tuberculosis sufferer, Holliday was involved in numerous dangerous situations. These led to frequent rumors and false reports of his demise. Newspapers back in the day weren't always the most reliable sources, especially when it came to sensational stories about notorious figures like Doc. Each time he was misreported dead, it only added to his legendary status. Number 11. Knife fights. There's this rumor that Doc Holliday was involved in numerous deadly knife fights.
Situated along Elm Street between Market and Austin Streets, their office thrived.
While it paints a vivid picture of him as a dangerous and skilled fighter, the reality is a bit murkier. Stories about his knife-wielding prowess are plentiful, but concrete evidence is pretty scarce. One of the most talked about incidents is the fight with Bud Ryan in Denver. They drew knives on each other, and Ryan ended up seriously wounded. However, beyond a few recorded skirmishes, the tales of Holliday engaging in numerous knife fights seem to be more folklore than fact. It's easy to see how his reputation as a hot-tempered and fearless individual could give rise to these stories. People love a good dramatic fight scene, and Holliday's larger-than-life persona fit the bill perfectly. Number 10. Numerous killings. Then there's the rumor that Doc Holliday killed numerous men during his lifetime. This rumor has certainly added to his fearsome reputation, but the reality is a bit different.
Until they dissolved the practice on March 2, 1874. Post-dissolution, Holliday established his own practice above the Dallas County Bank at the...
Documented killings by Holliday are few and far between. One of the confirmed incidents was the killing of Mike Gordon in Las Vegas, New Mexico, in 1879. Another was his participation in the gunfight at the OK Corral, where he played a crucial role. Beyond these, most of the stories about Holliday's deadly exploits are more myth than reality. Much of his violent reputation is based on folklore and the Wild West penchant for exaggeration. While he was undoubtedly involved in dangerous and violent situations, the actual number of men he killed is much lower than the rumors suggest. Number 9. Impressive marksmanship. Finally, let's address the rumor that Doc Holliday was a sharpshooter with impeccable aim. This one is a bit of a myth. Despite his notorious reputation, Holliday's aim was often poor, resulting in more misses than hits.
His persistent cough spells due to tuberculosis.
In several documented incidents, such as the shootout with Charles Austin in Dallas and the accidental shooting of saloon owner Milt Joyce in Tombstone, Holliday's shots often went astray. He wounded people more by chance than by precise shooting. While his quick draw and willingness to use a gun made him a formidable opponent, his actual marksmanship left much to be desired. It's a classic case of the legend outgrowing the man, with tales of his deadly accuracy more fiction than fact. Number 8. Fearsome reputation. Have you ever heard the rumor that Doc Holliday's fearsome reputation preceded him everywhere he went? Well, that's pretty much on the money. Doc's notoriety was such that people often knew him before he even set foot in a new town. But here's the kicker. His reputation led to a lot of exaggerated tales about his exploits. Imagine being in the Wild West, where stories are the main form of entertainment and news. When a man like Holliday, with his quick temper and willingness to fight, moves around, the stories about him tend to grow with each retelling. A minor scuffle could become a deadly showdown, and a close call could be turned into a tale of perfect marksmanship. While Doc certainly earned his reputation as a dangerous man, many of the stories about his exploits were embellished, turning him into an almost mythical figure. Number 7. Connection to the Mexican-American War. There's a rumor that Doc Holliday had a personal vendetta stemming from the Mexican-American War. This one's a bit of a stretch, but it does have some roots in reality. The truth is, Holliday's father, Henry Burroughs Holliday, served in the Mexican-American War. His father's involvement in the war did influence the family's dynamics, and by extension, young John Henry Holliday.
Holliday discovered his knack for gambling, eventually making it his primary source of income.
Henry Holliday's military service and subsequent status played a significant role in shaping the family's life. After the war, Henry brought home an adoptive son, Francisco, whom he had rescued during his service. This act and Henry's military background likely had a profound impact on Doc's upbringing, instilling in him a sense of resilience and toughness. While Doc himself didn't have a personal vendetta from the war, the experiences and stories from his father's involvement undoubtedly influenced his worldview and character. Number 6. Influence on popular culture. Doc Holliday's life has been heavily romanticized in books, movies, and TV shows. This rumor is absolutely true, and the reality is that his character has inspired numerous fictionalized portrayals. From classic westerns to modern films, Doc Holliday's persona has been a goldmine for storytellers.
Fortunately, on May 12, 1874, Holliday faced legal issues when he...
Think about the movies like Tombstone, where Val Kilmer's portrayal of Holliday brought a mix of charm, wit, and deadly skill to the screen. Books, TV shows, and even songs have all dipped into the well of Holliday's legend, often highlighting his friendship with Wyatt, his quick draw, and his devil-may-care attitude. These portrayals have done a lot to cement his status as a Wild West icon, blending fact and fiction into a captivating narrative that keeps people fascinated by his life. Number 5. The mysterious adoptive brother. There's a fascinating rumor that Doc Holliday had a mysterious and troubled adoptive brother. The rumor is actually rooted in truth. After serving in the Mexican-American War, Doc's father, Henry Burroughs Holliday, brought home an adopted son named Francisco. Francisco was a Mexican boy who Henry rescued during his service. However, Francisco's life was fraught with difficulties, primarily due to the tuberculosis that plagued the Holliday family. Unfortunately, Francisco succumbed to the disease, much like many others in the Holliday household. His death added to the family's sorrows and underscored the harsh realities of life during that time. While Francisco's story may not be as well known as Doc's, it certainly adds a layer of depth to the Holliday family history and provides context for the challenges they faced. Number 4. The hidden grave. One of the more intriguing rumors about Doc Holliday is that his final resting place is shrouded in mystery. This rumor holds quite a bit of truth. Doc died in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and his gravestone can be found in Linwood Cemetery. However, there's significant debate about whether he is actually buried there or not. When Doc died in the winter of 1887, the ground was frozen, making it difficult to dig a proper grave. It's believed that he was initially buried in a temporary grave, and there are questions about whether his body was ever moved to the marked grave in Linwood Cemetery. This uncertainty about his final resting place adds another layer of mystique to his already legendary life. Number 3. Escapades across the West.
In January 1875, he was arrested after a gunfire exchange with saloon keeper Charles Austin.
There's a persistent rumor that Doc Holliday's travels across the West were marked by continuous lawlessness. While there's some truth to this reputation as a troublemaker, the reality is more nuanced. Doc's movements from place to place were often driven by necessity and survival rather than a desire to break the law at every turn. After being diagnosed with tuberculosis, Holliday moved frequently in search of a climate that might alleviate his symptoms. His travels took him to various towns and cities where he tried to make a living through gambling and occasional dentistry. Yes, he had numerous run-ins with the law and was involved in several violent altercations, but these incidents were often a result of the rough-and-tumble nature of the places he lived in and the precarious lifestyle he led. his journey across the West was as much about finding a way to live with his illness as it was about escaping trouble. Number 2. The Earp Connection. Another enduring rumor is that Doc Holliday's relationship with the Earp brothers defined his later years. This one is absolutely true. Doc's alliance with Wyatt Earp in particular played a significant role in shaping his legacy.
Headed to Denver, Colorado. During the summer of 1875, he settled in Denver under the alias Tom Mackey and found work as a faro dealer for John A.
Their friendship began in Texas and solidified in places like Dodge City and Tombstone. Doc stood by the Earps during some of their most challenging moments, including the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral and the subsequent Vendetta ride. This loyalty cemented his place in Wild West history as a fearless and reliable ally. The tales of their exploits together have become legendary, with Holliday often depicted as the quintessential sidekick to Wyatt Earp's lawman. This relationship was a defining aspect of Doc's life and continues to be a major part of his enduring legend. Number 1. Enduring Legacy. Finally, there's a rumor that Doc Holliday's legend continues to be a subject of fascination and speculation.
Comique at 357 Blake Street. While he was there, he got into an argument with Bud Ryan.
This is undeniably true. Decades after his death, Doc Holliday remains a symbol of the Wild West's lawlessness, intrigue, and larger-than-life characters. Books, movies, and TV shows continue to portray him as a complex figure, a man of intelligence, skill, and unpredictable violence. His life story, filled with both triumphs and tragedies, resonates with audiences and keeps his legend alive. Whether through tales of his notorious gunfights, his enduring friendship with Wyatt Earp, or his relentless battle with tuberculosis, Doc Holliday's legacy is one that captures the imagination and fascination of people even today. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.